Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Several people have asked me about Vandas and what I do basically with Vandas here in the UK, where it's traditional to assume the light's not good enough. Well, in reality, it probably isn't, but there are ways of getting by. I haven't got many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. I don't normally count these two because they are very young plants. They are quite away from blooming size. They were bought as tiny little plants with just 2 or 3 leaves. That one lives on a mount. I mean, it's doing good, you know, it's putting up nice new growths, nice clean leaves, and it's got nice extended roots with growing tips. That's the important bit. Hang on, I'll have to move. I'm getting tangled up in the anosmia here. Wherever I am, that thing's in the way. And you'll have to put up with fog and fans and everything else that goes with this place at the moment because it's warm. Now that's the other seedling. That was put in a little open basket with a lot of moss. And this spring, I actually, well, a month or so ago, I hooked all the moss out because it was starting to decompose. And quite honestly, Vandas, you know, once they get going and they've established a root system, they don't really need to be in anything. You know, like camera's getting fogged. Orchids in the mist. But yeah, it's growing nicely. It got some water damage on that left-hand top leaf there, but the others aren't too bad. Again, new root growth in places, root tips shooting out. There's some around the other side. I can't get this down at the moment. There's stuff in the way. I don't tend to get that down unless I need to water it, which is daily, but not now. Out of these here, these are the larger ones. There's 4 along there and my species there. They've all bloomed for me. The one on the end there bloomed for the first time last year. I grew that from a very, very young plant. That's the one in the wooden basket. And again, that one had loads of moss in it. And, you know, after a while I hooked all the moss out. And the important thing on that one is that it did flower last year. Last year was the first time I ever had Vanda blooms in the grow room. And the reason being, more light. Quite simple and quite obvious, but not that easy to achieve without a little bit of thought. But that one's growing on well, and most of that plant is my growth. You know, that literally had about 5 leaves when I got it. I think it was one of the first ones I ever got. And it's a good root system, and it's just starting to shoot out new root growth in various places. A lot of them seem to be pointing upwards, but you can see nice new root tips on there, and it's a good plant. There's a nice bloom on it. Oh, this is difficult. So I'm trying to do this without getting all the plants down. This one here has a lovely bloom on it. That bloomed for the first time last year as well. That's got some purple edging to the higher leaves. Now that might be because that light's just a bit too much for that particular variety. That is possible even in the UK. You can see the join up there. The shade netting stops halfway through that panel, and that's the consequence of why these all bloomed last year, because that shade netting used to go right up to the end, and I thought, well, to give these more light, I'll stop the shade netting short, because everything else up in the roof needs that shade netting or it's just going to frazzle. But the Vandas need that extra bit, especially here in the UK. Again, root growth, root tips coming out. Now this one's stalled in the winter, and that's something I'll chat about in a minute. I'll put pop-ups of blooms as I'm going along these, although I'm not naming them now. Most of the time that's because I can't remember. So I'll put pop-ups of names. This one is putting on lovely top growth, and it's been continuously growing through the winter, so that's good. And as far as roots are concerned, on the base there's a lovely big fat one just starting. And all of the other main roots, the ones that are not really old, are starting to branch. So they're all coming back into growth. That one up the back there has got several side shoots coming out, so good active root growth on that. These are really chunky roots on this one. Not all Vandas are chunky. Now this one is the one my daughter got me, and again good top growth, continued growing nicely through the winter. A lot of these roots are old and possibly not even viable anymore, some of these in here, you know, but they don't do any harm. I could trim them up to make it look tidier, but at the moment there's only me sees these. And again, I've got reasonable root growth restarting here. Now the species one, Roblingiana, that's the only one I can remember, has always been a tatty looking plant. It's got a new kiki at the base, and I'm hoping that is going to produce roots. It's got a poor root system. Most of the older roots on it have died, but it is just coming back into growth. There's a nice root tip there, and you know, one of the roots from higher up the base has actually got a new growth on it. The other couple of good roots are near the top of the plant, and hopefully they'll start to shoot. That one whizzing upwards at the back of the plant, and this one coming out the side, and its growth down the side goes right down and round the back. But this never looked a good plant. When I got it, it was this bit. So that's what I bought. That's what I've added to it. And the bits I've added are quite nice clean leaves. But it's never going to look a good plant until that kiki gets big and covers up the base of the plant, which was like that when I got it basically. But that had 3 spikes last year, and hopefully will bloom again this year. But that's my poorest looking Vanda with the weakest root system. Not very good at all, that one, but at least it bloomed. Stick that one back up there. Right, UK growing of Vandas. Now, first of all, the species Roblingiana is recommended, if you can get hold of it, for UK growers, because it will bloom without the high light. And in the UK, that's normally what you get, is mediocre light. Well, that one will bloom on lower light levels and at lower temperatures. So there are some around. It's difficult to find the flipping information. There are also some mini Vandas that don't take up oodles of space, you know. So, you know, there are a variety available. There are also Vandas that are going to grow 12 foot tall with a 10-foot root system. You're not going to fit them on your windowsill. So, as I say, you'll have to put up with the fans coming and going. But how I grow mine geared up to being in the UK. Now, I'm changing from this year. But what I used to do is all through the growing season, these get dunked in a bucket down here. 1 bucket full of water with some feed. They get fed every time I water them. About once in a blue moon they do get watered with clean fresh water, but most of the time they get fed every time. They're high feeders and actively growing. Quite honestly, they do slow up in the winter. That's not their fault, that's my fault. The day lengths are so short that they do react to it, and they do slow right down and almost stop, but not completely. The top growth still continues, but at a slower rate. And if there's top growth growing, they still need hydration. So I've got very low light levels in the winter, and up until this spring, so including the winter just gone, the watering was going down to dunking them in the bucket for quite a short period of time, just enough to wet the roots, about every 3rd day. And as a consequence, the growing tips on the roots, these nice green bits, just disappear and look like that. And the roots close over. They stop growing because they're just not getting enough hydration. Now, I didn't know that. I do now. Thanks to a video on Moat's Orchids website by Dr. Moat. And okay, that's how they grow Vandas in Florida, or California, whichever it is, but somewhere a lot flipping warmer without the short day lengths that I have to put up with. And the basic principle is you soak these roots until they're dark green. By whatever method, it doesn't matter what method, whether you're soaking them with a hose, going back 10 minutes later, having a look, if they're not dark green, soak them again and repeat until they're dark green. Now with me, it's dunking them in a bucket and for an amount of time. Variable depending on whether I get distracted and walk away. Sometimes they'll be in the bucket for 2 hours and other times it's like 15 minutes. But they get dunked until those roots have taken in all the water they can. And then they just get hung up somewhere to drip, preferably not on other plants, and then put back in their place. And now this is being done daily. And it's going to continue to be done daily through the winter this year. And I'm going to try and stop those roots, stopping their growing pattern and stopping these green tips sealing over and then having to wait to get them going again. So this winter I'm going to try and keep the hydration to the everyday mark. They'll still have to put up with the lower temperatures. I can't afford to heat this place to 18 degrees at night. It's going to go down to 14 or 15 degrees C like it always has, and that keeps the top growth going. But I believe I can keep the root growth going as well by daily hydration. Now they're not going to sit in the bucket for anywhere near as long in the colder months because they won't use that water. They're growing a lot slower. But by hydrating them every day, I think I can keep the root growth going. I don't know yet because I haven't tried it, but I think I can. And then that gives them a much better start when the growing season kicks in. You know, end of February, beginning of March, the day lengths head back up to the old magic 12 hours, and they're in active growth from that point. And that's what they're doing now, actively growing. One of them's got just the start of a spike at the moment. The others will follow on. You know, I mean, we're well up into the 13 hours now. We'll be up to 14 soon. And then we end up in the silly game where we get 16-hour days, you know, which is a ridiculous amount of daylight. But given the hydration, they'll take it. They'll take those long day lengths and do well as a consequence for that period of time. So that's my Vandas and how I look after them. In the winter time, the level of feed will go down to a very, very low amount. But there'll still be feed in that bucket at every watering with a flush probably about once a fortnight. So they will still be fed. They're actively growing. They need some food. And this time of year, when that top growth really starts kicking off, the hydration's the same every day in the morning, but the feed level goes up. These are high feeders, so my feed level goes up this time of year to take full advantage of the longer days and the better temperatures. So that's my Vandas and how I look after them on the south coast of the UK. What I do may not be appropriate for everybody, because it's a combination of different ways of looking after Vandas. You know, a bit of Florida, a bit of the UK, a bit of taking day lengths into account. You know, no artificial lighting. When we're down to 8-hour days, that's what they get. And they're not only down to 8-hour days, they're down to very poor quality light for 8 hours. Because it's often drizzly and miserable and horrible and cloudy. And that's what we have to put up with in the UK. And these all bloomed last year as a consequence of moving that shade netting back and giving them better light. And thanks to Danny for the dunk in the bucket idea. I can't use a hose in here. I mean, an electrician would have a fit if he even walked in the door. If I start splashing water around in here, I'm going to fuse everything. I've got wires all over the place. I know where they are. This is my grow room, and I don't get my plants wet, and I don't get any water near those wires. So it works for me. Not recommended, but it works for me. So again, hydrate every day. That's what I'm going to do from now on. Low level feed through the winter, but still give them some. Much higher level feeds through the growing season. They'll take it. I mean, these and Phalaenopsis are two of the highest level feeders out of the common orchids that people grow. There are some others in that category as well. But so that's what I do, and last year was very successful. Blooms on all of my large Vandas. The two young ones over there, you know, give them time. They're still young plants. I don't think they're going to bloom this year, but probably the following year they might be ready. I need to get another half a dozen leaves on both of those plants. Some people say that every 4 leaves on a Vanda is the equivalent of a pseudobulb on a Cattleya as far as blooming is concerned. So don't think you're going to get a new spike because you've grown a new leaf. That ain't going to happen. You need some leaves and an extension in the vertical rhizome before it's ready to put another spike out. But then Vandas do funny things. You might grow 4 or 5 new leaves and suddenly it chucks out 2 or 3 spikes all at once. You know, you get to know your individual Vandas. But that's my lot, and that's what I do in the UK to keep my Vandas going. And they don't do bad. You know, I know quite a few people in the UK have had Vandas for years and never had a bloom. So I'm pleased with what these did last year, and you'll obviously get updates on how they do this year as this year goes on. But it's early days yet, you know, we're only just into April, so give them time and hopefully they will respond to this extra light, warmer night temperatures and higher daytime temperatures. So we'll see how we go. Okay, that's it for this one. See you next time. Bye for now.